Hi there, boys and girls. Today for Reading Workshop, we are going to be talking about the theme of a story. What might be the message in the story that the author is trying to portray to you? It might be something that you'll think about after you read the story. What is the takeaway? We often have grand conversations about the takeaway or the theme of the story. And we're not able to really do that right now. So you're going to have a nice conversation with your adult after you do reading today. And I want you to think to yourself, what was the theme of the story? So maybe if you're reading a fiction story, what did the characters learn, or how did their behavior change in the story? How did they grow? How did they shift? Maybe their perspective changed. Maybe a theme in your story might be courage, honesty, friendship, love, forgiveness, loyalty, hope, equality, hard work, or teamwork. So maybe the author is trying to bring across these themes for us to be able to bring those qualities into our life through the gift of reading a book. I hope you enjoy the story. Okay, readers, here we go. Mr. Seahorse is our story today by Eric Carle. Another book by Eric Carle on sea life. I love it. Mr. and Mrs. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea. Mr. Seahorse began to wiggle and twist this way and that. "It's time for me to lay my eggs," she said. "Can I help?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Oh, yes, thank you," said Mrs. Seahorse, and she laid her eggs in the pouch on Mr. Seahorse's belly. "I'll take good care of our eggs," said Mr. Seahorse. "I promise." As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a group of trumpet fish hidden in a patch of reeds. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Stickleback?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Delighted," replied Mr. Stickleback. "I just built a nest, and right away Mrs. Stickleback laid her eggs into it. Now I'm taking good care of them until they hatch." "Keep up the good work," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by something hidden in there. A lionfish hidden behind a coral reef. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you?" asked Mr. Seahorse. Mr. Tilapia couldn't answer. His mouth was full of eggs. I know," said Mr. Seahorse. "Mrs. Tilapia laid her eggs, and now you are taking good care of them until they hatch." Mr. Tilapia nodded his head. "You must be very happy," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. And Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea. He passed right by a pair of leaf fish hidden among the seaweed. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Curtis?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Perfectly fine," replied Mr. Curtis. "Mrs. Curtis laid her eggs, and I have stuck them on my head, and now I am taking very good care of them as they hatch." Oops, I made a little mistake there, so I had to go back and reread. "You are doing a good job," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. Are you all seeing a pattern here in the words? I'm seeing a pattern, and I'm also seeing a sequence in this story. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a stonefish hidden behind a rock. And there you see the stonefish. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Pipe?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Couldn't be better," replied Mr. Pipe. "Mrs. Pipe laid her eggs along my belly. Now I'm taking good care of them until they hatch. You should feel proud of yourself, said Mr. Seahorse, and he swam along his way. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. How are you, Mr. Bullhead? Asked Mr. Seahorse. Tip-top, replied Mr. Bullhead. Mrs. Bullhead laid her eggs, and the eggs hatched, and now I'm babysitting. You're doing a fine job, said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. The time had come for Mr. Seahorse's babies to be born. Mr. Seahorse wiggled and twisted this way and that, and at last the babies tumbled from Mr. Seahorse's pouch and swam away. One baby turned around and tried to come back into the pouch. Oh no, said Mr. Seahorse, I do love you, but now you are ready to be on your own. And that's the end. Dear friends, in most fish families, after the mother laid the eggs, they're left on their own. But there are exceptions such as the seahorse, the stickleback, the tilapia, Curtis nursery fish, pipefish, bullhead catfish, and some others. Not only are the eggs cared for by the parent, but surprise, that parent is the father. This is my story about them. And that's what Eric Carle has to say. So boys and girls, I'm wondering if you can think of what the theme of this story might be and how it will relate to your reading today. The theme that I'm seeing in this story is that we just learned some facts. Even though this was a fiction story, we learned some real live facts about sea animals and the fathers that take care of their babies or the eggs instead of leaving them alone like most fish do. So we learned about a lot of different types of fish and sea animals that actually take care of the eggs. And not being the parent that you would think, not the mama, but the papa who takes care of the eggs. That's it for now, friends.